The bright studio lights warmed the stage of the view, and the live audience clapped as Meghan Markle stepped out. She wore a sleek black dress, her hair pulled back, her smile picture perfect. The panel of hosts welcomed her with practiced charm, each handshake measured, each compliment rehearsed. It was supposed to be a light segment. Meghan was there to promote a mental health initiative tied to a global charity. But even before she sat down, something in the air felt off. Meghan's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and her posture was too straight, like someone bracing for impact. Sunny Hostin led the first question. Meghan, your campaign has touched many lives, especially young women struggling with anxiety and identity. What inspired you to lead this? Meghan nodded. When you've lived through isolation, judgment, and fear even under a royal title, realize mental health isn't just personal, it's political. And too often, it's ignored. Audience clapped politely. Meghan's voice was calm, but her words had weight. The panel shifted slightly. It wasn't the answer they expected. Less polished, more pointed. Whoopi Goldberg tried to keep things light. Well, I'm glad you're out here talking about healing. Lord knows we need more of that in this world. Meghan gave a soft laugh, but her gaze remained focused, like she knew a storm was coming. And it was Sunny leaned in again. You've also become a symbol of something larger, celebrity activism. Some people say it's brave. Others say it's strategic. What do you say? There it was. The first test. Meghan paused. I didn't ask to be a symbol. But if speaking truth makes me a target, I'll still speak. Then Joy Behar, who had been oddly quiet, raised an eyebrow and smiled with thin lips. Isn't it a little convenient, though? She asked. You say the media hurt you, yet here you are, using it again. Isn't that rebranding? The studio fell still. Even the camera crew flinched. Meghan's head turned slowly toward Joy. Her jaw tightened for a second, but then she smiled. Not sweetly, sharply. I'm not rebranding, she said. I'm reclaiming. There's a difference. One is pretending. The other is surviving. A murmur swept through the crowd. Some applauded. Others weren't sure. But the air had changed. Whoopi glanced at the control room. A producer behind the glass was speaking into a headset, signaling something. The floor manager whispered to a camera operator. The segment was slipping out of its planned flow, and they knew it. Anna Navarro crossed her arms. Sunny leaned back. Joy looked unfazed, but she blinked. Meghan adjusted in her seat. Her voice had sharpened, but she hadn't raised it. She wasn't angry. She was deliberate. I've spent years being told to be silent, to be grateful, to smile while they rewrite my life. If you think sitting here today is easy, you don't understand what it costs. The audience clapped louder this time. Kay Gana didn't break eye contact with Joy. There was something behind her eyes, now a kind of steel. Control room chatter increased, a producer mouthed. Cut to commercial. Bet the director hesitated. Then Whoopi jumped in. Kay, okay, let's take a breath. We're all here for the same reason: change, healing, conversation. Meghan, thank you for being honest. That matters. Meghan nodded politely, but her hands were folded tightly in her lap. She knew more was coming, and she was ready. What the audience didn't see were the text messages being sent backstage. One of the executive producers typed fast, "She's going off script." Another one replied, "Let it ride." Ratings just spiked. But it wasn't just about ratings anymore. Meghan had crossed a line, maybe one they hadn't expected, or maybe one they had feared. She was no longer here to play safe. And everyone at the table now knew it. The show returned from a brief commercial break, but the air hadn't cleared. If anything, the tension was thicker. Meghan sat upright, her hands resting calmly on the table, but her eyes were sharper now. The applause from the audience had quieted to a hum of anticipation. Viewers at home didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness one of the most talked about moments in daytime television. Whoopi, trying to regain control, smiled and said, "Let's bring it back to the initiative." Meghan, your foundation has been praised for its work in underserved communities, especially around mental health access. Meghan nodded, grateful for the pivot. Yes, we've partnered with organizations in cities and rural areas where people are often overlooked. It's about listening. Not talking at people, but with them. But before she could continue, Anna Navarro leaned in, her tone crisp. Can we really separate your message from your status, though? You come with a platform most people will never have. Isn't it fair to say this is also about power? Meghan looked at her, calm, unshaken. Power without purpose is noise, she replied. What I'm trying to do is use mine so that others can find their voice. Anna didn't respond immediately. The silence was enough. Meghan took the moment and ran with it. You all sit at this table because people trust you to ask questions, Meghan continued. But too often those questions become weapons. And the people answering them, especially women, get sliced open on live TV. We call it conversation. But it's something else entirely, the audience murmured. Whoopi shifted in her chair. Joy Behar smirked again, and this time it was colder. So you think we're the problem? Joy asked, casually sipping her coffee. I think the system is, Meghan said without missing a beat. And we're all part of it, whether we admit it or not. Joy set her cup down. Let me tell you something, Meghan. I've been doing this show for years. I've been called things you can't imagine just for having an opinion. You don't get to act like you're the only one. Who's suffered? Meghan inhaled slowly. The lights were hot. The crowd was silent again. Then she spoke. I never said I was the only one. I said I'm tired of pretending suffering is a competition. It's not about who had it worse. It's about what we do now. The moment stretched long. The panel sat quietly. The cameras zoomed in slightly. Meghan wasn't performing. She wasn't promoting. She was revealing something raw. The control room was quiet now, too. One producer said under his breath, "We've crossed the point of no return." In the wings backstage, Meghan's publicist stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let it play. Another aide held a phone in their hand, watching Twitter light up in real time. Hashtag Meghan on the View, hash she did not come to play, hashtag Truth Table trending already. Clips were being clipped. Edits for viral soundbites were being made. But Meghan wasn't done. There are millions of women out there, she said slowly, who have been silenced not because they're weak, but because they were strong at the wrong time, in the wrong room, in front of the wrong people. Anna cleared her throat. "'Kay? And you think this is one of those rooms?" Meghan looked her straight in the eye. "You tell me," Whoopi sighed, both amused and exhausted. "Let's take another break," she said to the control room. But Meghan interrupted. "No, let's not." Joy raised an eyebrow. "Are you giving us direction now?" "I'm giving myself permission," Meghan said. "Something I've waited too long for." Gasps. A few audience members clapped. Meghan's voice had grown steadier. Her words weren't rushed. Wasn't angry. 'Twas done with image control, with playing polite, with being misunderstood by design. "I didn't come here to fight," she added, "but I won't sit quietly while you decide who I get to be." Whoopi looked around the table, then toward the director's booth, then back at Meghan. "Okay," she said softly, as if recognizing the gravity of the moment. "Then let's keep going." And they did. But from this point on, it wasn't an interview. It was a reckoning. The studio lights burned a little brighter now. Meghan leaned forward, elbows on the table, no longer trying to maintain a careful tone. She wasn't smiling for the cameras. She wasn't filtering her words. Everyone watching inside the KS studio and across the internet felt the shift. Whoopi, ever the steady moderator, glanced at the teleprompter and then at her producers behind the glass. They were shaking their heads slightly. There was no going back to the scripted questions. Anna Navarro tried again to move the conversation into a more palatable zone. Let's talk about your foundation's partnerships. You mentioned mental health support for veterans. Meghan's eyes didn't move from joy. We'll get there, she said coolly, but I need to finish something. Joy crossed her arms. Go ahead. Meghan took a breath. There's something toxic about this format. This idea that we invite people to speak and then corner them with snark, edit their answers in real time, and turn pain into entertainment. The audience murmured again. Whoopi looked uncomfortable now. This wasn't just a guest pushing back, was a dismantling of the show's very structure, live. And yet Anna replied, trying to contain the fallout. This is a space where voices are heard, where real conversations happen. Meghan nodded slowly. But only if those voices fit the frame. If they're polished enough. They make the audience laugh in the right places, cry at the right cues. And if they don't, well, then you. Call it a meltdown, right? Joy didn't flinch. You think we're here to tear you down? You think we don't get judged the same way? Meghan tilted her head. I think you've built careers surviving the judgment. I admire that, but surviving it doesn't mean you should repeat it. That landed hard. The audience was quieter, now not frozen, but listening. Backstage, Meghan's publicist whispered. To a producer, she's doing exactly what we warned she might do. The producer responded, and she's doing it better than we feared. Meanwhile, phones buzzed across the nation. Clips were already on TikTok, YouTube, and X. The hashtags were multiplying. Hashtag Meghan Unfiltered, hashtag The View, Unraveled, hashtag Live, and Unscripted. Meghan leaned back slightly, her gaze now softer. You asked if I'm rebranding? I'm not, okay? I'm refusing to be rebranded by others, okay? I'm done allowing my name to be the clickbait for narratives that don't serve me or anyone else. Sonny? Hostin, who had remained mostly silent, finally spoke. Do you think your critics see your strength as a threat? Yes, Meghan said, immediately. Because it's easier to attack a woman's tone than her truth, especially when she's not afraid anymore. There it was. It's the core of it. Not just an answer and indictment of how women, particularly women of color, are treated in media spaces designed for civility, but soaked in control. Anna cleared her throat. So, what do you want, Meghan? What's the end game? I want women to be allowed to speak fully, Meghan replied. Without being told afterward that they were too much? I want spaces like this to stop rewarding silence and start listening to substance. A long pause followed. Panel was speechless not because they didn't have questions, but because they suddenly understood that any question now would only deepen the confrontation. Meghan wasn't defending a platform. She was exposing a culture. Joy chuckled lightly, breaking the silence. You do realize you've probably just made this the most watched segment of the year? Meghan smiled for the first time in 10 minutes, but it didn't reach her eyes. Maybe, but I didn't come here to trend. I came here to tell the truth. That line would be replayed 1,000 times. In the control room, the senior producer finally gave the order. Cut too wide. Prep the next guest. Duh, don't take her off yet. They wanted more. Everyone did. But Meghan had other plans. She turned toward the camera, directly addressing the audience now. For anyone watching who's ever felt like they had to shrink to fit into someone else's comfort zone, this isn't about me. It's about all of us who've been told to soften our voice just to be heard. Speak louder. And don't wait for permission. She stood slowly. This wasn't a tantrum. It was quiet power. The panel didn't try to stop her. She picked up her coat, nodded politely to Whoopi, and walked off stage. The camera lingered on the empty seat for a few seconds. Then Whoopi, always the one to land the plane, said with a deep breath, well, we'll be right back. But America wouldn't be, because the moment had already gone viral. The reckoning was already underway. The studio came back from commercial. But something had shifted. The laughter was gone. The applause had quieted. Meghan's chair remained empty, but her presence still filled the room like a shadow that wouldn't leave. Whoopi Goldberg looked down at her notes, then tossed them aside. She folded her hands and faced the camera. "We're back," she said, her voice calm but tight. "And as you saw, Meghan Markle has stepped away." There was no laughter, no attempt at a joke. Even Joy Behar was silent. Anna Navarro glanced toward the wings. Did anyone talk to her? She whispered off mic, not knowing her words were still caught by a hot feed. A producer signaled nervously, "No update." Backstage, Meghan stood in the hallway. Not in makeup, not near any handlers. Alone, her phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from friends, team members, strangers. The clip was already viral if the price of truth is being kicked out of every room. "Then I'll build my own," was being quoted in real time by celebrities, activists, and news anchors. She hadn't planned to say it, but she meant every word. In the studio, Sunny Hostin finally broke the silence. "She didn't storm off," she said. "Let's not frame it that way. She disengaged. There's a difference." Joy rolled her eyes. "Are we rewriting what happened now?" "Joy," Whoopi warned. But Anna leaned in. "No, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what just happened. If we bring guests here, we ask for their truth. Then we act surprised when they deliver it." "You think we were too harsh?" Joy asked, folding her arms. Anna didn't answer immediately. "Think we poked the bear." And she showed her teeth. The live audience was glued to the unfolding drama. Phones were out. Live stream numbers were spiking. Producers whispered into headsets. PR teams scrambled behind the scenes. Back in the hallway, Meghan finally opened her phone. Her husband had messaged, "Proud of you. Watching from home." You didn't flinch. Another message, this one more cryptic, from a contact saved only as LA Legal. "Now they'll come harder. Be ready." She locked the phone, took a breath, and made her way to the green room. Meanwhile, on air, The View was no longer hosting a celebrity segment. It had become something else, a national moment, a public reckoning. Whoopi turned to the panel. "You know, I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of guests walk off. But this felt like something deeper." Anna agreed. "She's not just reacting to this table. She's reacting to years of being told she's too loud, too sensitive, to something." Joy was unmoved. Or maybe she's just too privileged to handle disagreement. The air snapped. Sunny turned. "You call it privilege. I call it survival. Women like Meghan don't get to raise their voices without being labeled. When they speak out, they're divisive. When they stay quiet, they're complicit. So which is it?" That moment, raw, unresolved, and painful, was clipped and uploaded before the show even ended. Cable news picked it up. Online forums exploded. Political pundits weighed in. Mental health advocates rallied behind Meghan. Conservative critics mocked her. The digital war had begun. And yet, Meghan didn't watch it unfold. Not yet. She sat quietly in the green room, finally sipping the water she'd ignored earlier. A young intern poked her head in, unsure whether to speak. "Miss Markle," the girl said softly, "I just wanted to say thank you. My sister went through what you're talking about." The silence. The headlines. "You said what she couldn't." Meghan smiled faintly. "Thank you," she replied. "Tell her to speak, even if her voice shakes." Outside, paparazzi crowded the exits. Helicopters hovered above the studio roof. 'Twas chaos. But inside, in the eye of the storm, Meghan Markle was calm. She knew something had changed, not just in her image. In the system, she hadn't walked off to escape. She had walked off to begin. And by the time the next guest sat down on the View's couch, no one remembered their name. The only story that mattered was already out there, rewriting the narrative in real time, one voice, one chair, and one unforgettable walkout at a time. The morning after the broadcast, the entire world was still buzzing. News anchors used words like historic, meltdown, power play. Every network had a different angle. On CNN, it was Meghan's truth versus talk show power. On Fox, it was entitled Duchess Storms Off Set. On social media, there were thousands of threads, some praising Meghan for her bravery, others accusing her of playing victim again. In a private Manhattan suite, Meghan sat with her team. No cameras now. Just coffee, silence, and scrolling. Headlines. "We need to respond," her media advisor said. Meghan shook her head. "They want a war. I gave them my piece." Her lawyer chimed in. "You've drawn blood." Networks are talking legal liability, emotional distress claims, even breach of segment contract. Meghan raised an eyebrow. "For telling my truth," he didn't answer. Instead, her publicist slid over a tablet. On it, a leaked memo from one of The View's executive producers. The subject line was bold: "Crisis Management, Markle Fallout." Meghan skimmed the bullet points. Words like damage control, narrative reset, and future guest guidelines jumped out. There was even a plan to quietly float a replacement guest for next week, a celebrity known for avoiding controversy. Meghan closed the tablet and looked up. "So, they're already erasing me." "No," her advisor said. "They're trying to control the aftermath." But the aftermath wasn't just on TV. Across the country, women were marching, spontaneous gatherings in Los Angeles, Chicago, even London. Some carried signs: "Reclaim your voice. We're all Meghan today." Others were subtler threads online, personal blog posts, emails shared between friends. Stories of gaslighting, workplace silencing, and being labeled difficult for simply defending themselves. Meghan hadn't planned to lead a movement, but movements don't ask for permission. Meanwhile, back at the studio, the fallout was tearing into The View like a slow explosion. Internally, producers were divided. One camp believed Meghan's segment was a necessary shakeup. The other felt it had crossed an invisible line. Joy Behar was furious. "Now we're the bad guys for doing our job." Sunny Hostin had left early that morning, citing personal reasons. Anna Navarro hadn't stopped giving interviews, mostly defending Meghan. Whoopi remained silent. She hadn't spoken to anyone, not the press, not the team, not even her co-hosts. But everyone knew she was processing it differently. That afternoon, Whoopi finally gave a statement, not on air. Not to a journalist, but in a handwritten letter posted on her personal site. She wrote, "Sometimes silence is a choice. Sometimes it's not." On that stage, I saw a woman decide that no table would ever again hold the power to define her. Whether you agree with her or not, you cannot deny the courage it takes to walk away when the room demands your silence. That kind of courage. It changes things. It went viral in less than 10 minutes. Meghan read the post while sitting alone near the window. The city below buzzed, unaware of the storm she had stirred. Or maybe fully aware and quietly watching. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "I'm tired," Meghan replied. "I know, but you spoke for more than just yourself." Meghan looked out at the skyline. "Did I? Or did I just speak too loud for the room I was in?" Her mother answered softly, "Maybe, but sometimes the room needed breaking." That night, Meghan declined every interview offer. She turned down APDs, exclusive sit-downs, podcast deals, and streaming docuseries proposals. She wasn't interested in feeding the cycle again, but she did write a single post on her own website. Just 5 sentences. "The room was never meant for me. I knew that when I sat down. I hoped it might listen. It didn't. So I built a door. No hashtags, no photos, just words." Within hours, it was shared by Malala Yousafzai, Ava DuVernay, and even Michelle Obama. The story was no longer about an argument on The View. It was about the power of walking away. What happens when a woman dares to speak without waiting for permission? And Meghan Markle wasn't done yet. That same evening, the New York skyline shimmered with rain. Street lights reflected off the wet pavement outside a private residence in Soho, where Meghan Markle quietly entered a townhouse surrounded by minimal security. No entourage, no paparazzi. Just a few dim lights glowing through the windows. Inside, a small group had gathered: activists, legal experts, media veterans, and 2 members of a global nonprofit board. Meghan's walk-off had stirred more than TV ratings. It had triggered momentum. Unscripted, unplanned, undeniable. She sat at the head of the table. No cameras, just minds and strategy. "We're past defending," said one human rights advocate from Geneva. "What you said wasn't just personal. It exposed a fault line in media ethics, and the way that studio handled it. It's becoming a global talking point." Another added, "The moment you said, if the price of telling the truth is being kicked out of every room, then I'll build my own." That wasn't a soundbite. That was a mission statement. Meghan remained quiet, listening, her fingers wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. It was one thing to speak, it was another to lead. Back at ABC Studios, the ripple effects continued. Executives huddled in. Crisis response meetings. Internally, some pushed for a full public apology, worried about legal exposure and reputational harm. Others insisted on holding the line, claiming Meghan had violated interview protocol and had been unreasonably combative. Sponsors were divided. One tech company pulled advertising. A pharmaceutical giant issued a statement of neutrality. But the most surprising shift came from within the industry itself. An anonymous whistleblower leaked a segment rehearsal memo to the press, revealed planned questions intended to provoke Meghan. Push rebrand narrative. One note read: "Challenge sincerity. Keep tone firm but humorous." The backlash was immediate. Hashtag the scripted trap began trending. Suddenly, this wasn't just about one woman walking off set. It was about how platforms stage drama under the mask of journalism, and how women, especially women of color, are baited into explosions for ratings. Meanwhile, Meghan's team was preparing a quiet counteroffensive. No press conferences, no staged reactions, just facts. They compiled receipts, mails, contracts, rehearsal outlines, segment briefs, documenting how the interview had shifted from advocacy into ambush. "We're not fighting fire with fire," said her media advisor. "We're pulling the curtain back." Meghan nodded. No more performance, just truth. That night, she met with one more person, a former royal aide turned friend, who had flown in from London under the radar. "I watched the segment," he said, his voice low. "You were braver than you had to be." "I was tired of waiting for someone else to be first," she replied. He leaned forward. "You know, this isn't over, right? They'll come harder now, with more subtlety, less noise, but more precision." Meghan smiled faintly. "Let them. I know where I stand." In the days that followed, something remarkable unfolded. Independent journalists began revisiting past interviews, moments where other women had been cut off, shamed, or ridiculed live on air. Patterns emerged. A familiar arc: provoke, isolate, react, condemn. A silent movement began online. Hashtag Rethink the Room. Women shared their own stories of being shut down in meetings, in courtrooms, in media interviews. The conversation expanded from Meghan to millions. On The View, the atmosphere had changed too. An unspoken tension lingered over the set. Ratings had spiked after the Markle episode, but not for the reasons the producers expected. Viewership didn't trust the performance anymore. They wanted transparency. Joy Behar seemed less sharp. Sunny was more reserved. Anna spoke with more caution. And Whoopi, Whoopi watched, waited, and occasionally, when the cameras weren't rolling, she would stare at the empty seat that once held a storm and a truth that couldn't be edited away. Meanwhile, Meghan declined all TV offers. No exclusive sit-downs, no redemption arcs. She didn't need the microphone anymore. She had found something far more powerful. Conviction, not rehearsed, not approved, not framed by commercial. Breaks, just conviction. Steady, unshaken, quietly rising like a tide. And the world is beginning to listen. The week ended not with a news cycle, but with a reckoning. Cross networks, debate shows spun clips of Meghan Markle's walk-off into every possible angle, defiance or diva, courage or collapse. But beyond the noise, something deeper had started to form, something unshakable. It wasn't just about Meghan anymore. It was about the system. That Friday morning, the Washington Post published a front-page expose titled "Manufactured Outrage: The Media Blueprint for Silencing Powerful Women." The article traced decades of talk show tactics, scripted ambushes, racially coded questions, and carefully timed outrage designed not to inform, but to provoke. One of the documents featured was a producer memo from Meghan's The View segment, the very same memo that had been leaked earlier in the week. The authenticity had been confirmed. The network couldn't deny it now. And for the first time in recent history, The View issued a formal apology not for Meghan's walkout, but for how the interview was framed and handled in a way inconsistent with the show's values. The words were carefully chosen, but the meaning was loud. It was a crack in the armor. That same day, Meghan appeared not on TV, but at a quiet press event held by the World Mental Health Coalition. No red carpet, no stylist, no script. It's just a simple stage and a chair. She waited until the cameras were rolling. Then she spoke. "I didn't leave the room to make a moment. I left because no one else would." Her voice was steady, not theatrical. Her presence filled the space not with stardom, but with clarity. Women, especially women of color, expected to smile through insult, expected to nod through discomfort. And when we don't, we're framed as angry, as unstable. It's difficult. But what's more difficult is waking up every day, knowing your words will be twisted no matter how softly you say them. The silence in the room was heavy, not awkward, reverent. "I don't want more airtime," she continued. "I want fairness. I want dignity. And I want the media to stop treating women like performance pieces for public judgment." The applause didn't erupt. It rose slowly, firmly, like a wave building from quiet conviction. That speech would later be taught in communication courses and replayed on college campuses and advocacy panels. Not for its fame, for its substance. By Sunday, several other celebrities, actors, musicians, even politicians posted their own stories. The trend wasn't hashtag activism anymore. It was structure. It was system-wide. A report from Columbia Journalism Review confirmed what many had whispered for years. Female guests were more likely to be interrupted on major talk shows, more likely to be labeled emotional, and more likely to be criticized in post-show press cycles. The old playbook had been exposed. At ABC, a quiet internal audit began. Several producers were reassigned. One resigned. Talk shows across networks adjusted their pre-interview strategies, knowing they were now under watch. And Meghan, she didn't go back to the stage. Instead, she launched a new initiative. The Narrative Trust, a media watchdog and advocacy group aimed at holding press institutions accountable for framing bias, interview ethics, and safe representation. Its board included journalists, psychologists, and public defenders. Its first grant-funded an AI-based media analysis tool designed to track bias in real time. The day it launched, Time magazine named Meghan one of the 25 most influential voices in media. She didn't post a victory speech, no viral tweet. She simply released a statement. This isn't about one chair on one stage. It's about every chair where truth gets interrupted. then the millions watching who wonder if they're next. In the final scene of this quiet storm, Meghan sat in her garden in Montecito, away from the glare. Her husband joined her with tea. Their children played in the background. "I saw the segment," he said. "You didn't flinch." "I couldn't afford to," she replied. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled not because she had to, but because she meant it. Not every war ends in noise, some end in silence. And in that silence, something stronger begins.